Hello, everyone. Welcome to the virtual Q&A set for Crossing Generations. My name is Elena. I am the programming intern for this season of Viet Film Fest, and I will be moderating this Q&A. So we just watched all these amazing short films, and we've brought such amazing filmmakers to talk about the processes behind such amazing stories. So before we get into it, I'd just like everyone to introduce themselves to the viewers watching at home.
Hi everyone, my name is Duke An. I am the writer, director, producer, and editor of Mike, and I'm currently based in Los Angeles.
Hi, my name is Klein. I'm an actor and a director, and I'm currently living in Paris.
Hi, so my name is Dorian. I'm the director, co-director with Klein of the short film 4, and I'm currently living in France.
Hi, I'm Tao Lam. I'm from Toronto, Canada. I'm co-director of Both People.
Thank you all for introducing yourselves, and let's just get right into it. So the first question I have is, after watching all of these short films, I noticed that there was these prevalent themes of memory and past experience. So what role do these themes play in how your characters understand their identities and relationships? Let's start with the director of Mike.
Yes, of course. So for Mike, um, the cultural shift is really huge, of course. I'm so sorry. So the question was about the past memories, but right now on the recording is the experience to navigate cultural identity shifts. So I'm wondering which one's answer I should answer. So for Mike, the roles of memory and past experience plays an interesting thing within the characters because it is his first day of school in America, a place he has never been. South Dakota, even more so, a place he's never been. He's been born and raised in Ho Chi Minh City in Vietnam all his life. So the memory and past experience doesn't really transfer when he goes to America to an entirely different environment. So the way it plays out is actually based on more of a cultural history, because Vietnam and America, we have a very deep history. Of course, it's based on the war, and it plays more on how the society that Mike jumps in America, how the history really affects him and the way he understands his identity and relationship within that world. Because the war has created certain perceptions on Americans, especially rural Americans in South Dakota, and how they view Vietnamese. And because of that, it really deeply affected him in a way that he never faced before, because it's not something that he can pull it out from his memory. It's more of something that he has to adapt there and now at the age of 16. So it's definitely have more, like, I would say, a negative consequences to what the decision he make in the film.
So about the movie 4, as you can see in our film, it's a chronological story. We are moving forward, and I would say it's more about the future than the past. The theme of memory is really important. It's a part of our characters, and they are building the future with it. You can see the altar on the screen with photos of family members who have passed away. And I would say it's about how they've created a new identity. And also, we can talk about dual identity, actually, in our film.
Yeah, we assume that there is no doubt or any problems about the identity of the Vietnamese culture and identity. So they just came in France and just live the life and use the thing they know in Vietnam just in the house. So yeah, it's not a big deal. We're just about the future, like you said.
For both people, it was the story is basically all about memories, but not my memories because I left when I was 3, so I have no memories of it. So the whole process of this that got the ball rolling on this film was basically me trying to uh, learn from other people's stories and other people's memories of what happened during the war and our escape from the war. So I think it plays a huge part on it. A lot of people during, like my parents, kept the memories to themselves. So it was a real journey for me to like dive into it and sort out like all the facts of the story and what their memories were like. And because it happened quite a long time ago, everybody's memories kind of shifted a bit and their perspectives are different. My mom's memories of our escape was very different from the memories my dad had. So it was like the whole story, I think, is based on memories that are being passed from one generation to the next. So making this film allowed me to capture my parents' memories, which allowed me to pass the memories on to my daughter.
Thank you all so much for sharing. It sounds like a lot of your films kind of talk about the past and then also using your past to influence the future, or one or both. So it's really nice to see such diverse range in this set. So kind of continuing what Klein and Dorian brought up with identity, I'm really curious how your protagonists in each of your films navigated identity within the stories that you were telling. And we'll go in the same order as last.
So for Mike,
Sorry.
oh, I'm so sorry. No, we could go. Okay, I'll just go real quick, and then we'll jump right over to Fa. So for Mike, the film, like the way that he deals with it is a little different, right? Because when you're born and raised in Vietnam, it's a semi like biographical films based on my own experience. When I grew up, I know about America through the movies in Disney channels, on Cartoon Networks, on HBO, and these movies create a certain pictures of how American high school is supposed to be. It's supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be where you find your crowd. It's supposed to be where you find your interest. What it doesn't really shown, especially in those movies during the 2000, is the fact that what about Asians? Like, what about the Vietnamese people? How does their experience plays in high school, especially when they're in a place where they are the only person of colors? What if they're in a place where the people there doesn't really know anything about Vietnam except for the war, which happened 50 years ago? And for Mike, the cultural identity shift is very strong, and he has to find a way to navigate that right away because he was never taught about that. And so for me, I think by the end of the movie, you can notice that he has found a way to shift his way of viewing America and how to adapt to that new environment and community and find belonging, which is something that you really deeply want when you're teenagers. However, of course, there is a connotation that there is a bad consequences to the way that he essentially abandoned himself and abandoned his Vietnamese heritage as a mode to adapt and understand the culture that he's being in these environment and communities. So for me, it's sort of like a typical coming of age, but I really want to explore how that coming of age type of story really plays out for Vietnamese, especially Vietnamese that weren't born in America, but were born and raised in Vietnam and really interested in America enough to go and have a study abroad sections here in America.
I'm sorry for the interruption. Joke. So for our film, it's a little bit hard to say because there is no any real interaction with the people from France, because we just see the entire family in the house. So I can just say that learn to speak French, even though it was the first generation to arrive in France, and at the time we were able to see a young white woman arrive at home because it's a girlfriend of the boy. and the family welcomed her very well. So we cannot say that there is a real change of identity, but rather an evolution towards a dual culture. But for the dual culture, it's happening to, I think, every immigrant on Earth, and everyone has to deal with this. So yes, that's the only thing I can say.
Should I jump in? I didn't know the other co-director had anything to add to that. This Boat People does not really dive into what life was like once we landed in Canada. It more dives into like Vietnam, which because I left at 3, I don't have any memories of it. And so for me, I feel like when I tell people that I'm born in Vietnam, it's hard because I don't really know the language, nor like I don't know how to read or write. And when we came to Canada, my parents basically kind of enforced or encouraged us to learn and assimilate to Canadian culture. And so I'm kind of straddling both sides where I know I'm born in Vietnam. I know this is my heritage and but everything I have inside of me, my way of thinking, my values are very much Canadian. So I have a hard time kind of saying, oh, like even just making this film, I had a hard time embracing that, Vietnam War and being a refugee because I have no memories of it. And I feel kind of weird, like I'm an imposter or something, making claims to all this. So not as the character in the film, but as a director and writer of the film, that's kind of where how I'm experiencing and navigating the cultural identity of this, like from Vietnam to Canada. Does that kind of make sense?
Definitely, and thank you all so much for sharing.
Yeah. I can add something, maybe. I just forgot that in the film, the protagonist is speaking French all along the film, and in the end, the final sentence is in Vietnamese. So there is a shift between the two cultures, and it's both integrated in the lives because it's been for 50 years they've been here. So yeah, everything was in French, but they don't forget the Vietnamese culture and the language. So that's it.
No, thank you for that addition. I think it really rounds out your response. So kind of talking about all these films, they're all in such distinct locations from like France or even that diaspora moment from Vietnam to Canada, like in Boat People. So I was curious, how do the settings in all of your films influence the story?
So for me, because once again, it's like a movie based on my own experience of going into South Dakota, it's very interested to kind of explore and understand like how was my experience when I was there. And for me, honestly, the my I was questioning my identity a whole lot once again because of people perception of the Vietnam War, the perceptions that, almost where I was living in a town of 100 people, where I was the only person of colors. And so the experience was a lot more of lumping Vietnamese and, like Chinese and Koreans all together as one kind of group. So is that kind of ignorance, is that kind of racism that really, when you're in that age, you sort of realize like when you are in that mode, you really want to fit in. For you, the goal of surviving, the goal of adapting, and especially when you're in America by yourself, living with only the host family, the desire to fit in, the desire to not experience the fear of missing out becomes a lot more important in your life. And for that, I think I use that experience to kind of like go through with Mike, where he really are influenced by how ignorance and how racism and how people understanding of the Vietnam Wars in these rural area really affect his own perceptions, his negative perception really of being a Vietnamese, and his final desire at the end of the film to really shred himself of his own Vietnamese name, his own Vietnamese outfit, and everything like that, for the goal of, you know, having a friend. So for me, I think the setting, especially in those kind of area where, you know, it might not be as open-minded, as liberal as say Los Angeles or as New York, really plays a heavy role in these type of fish out of water story.
I would say, like the previous question, is kind of the same thing in the film. The family has to learn the language to be able to integrate more quickly in France. And the children, they arrived very young in France, and therefore they have a dual culture. They learn French culture at school, the language, the culture, and at home they have the Vietnamese culture. So obviously they have two of them. And parents, they came at they were like maybe 30 years old, so they know everything about Vietnam, and they are very attached to their culture, and it's the only thing they know. So they have to juggle with the French environment, culture, and the Vietnamese one. So it's kind of the same thing in the first question, but yeah.
Okay. I think what you guys said was, it's like things I could relate to, like being lumped into like all Asians are the same. Because I had a lot of that experience growing up where they just, made fun of you and called you Asian, and that was, or Chinese when you're like Vietnamese. And the thing is, like, going from Vietnam to Canada, the whole boat people is about the journey, right? And so we're taking a journey from one country to another, and they're very two drastic countries. And so in order, like for my parents, in order to assimilate quickly, they had to shed their Vietnamese identity, right? And it was at home, it was English, or like my parents learning it was broken English, a lot of television, just so that we can also pick up on the culture and the language quickly. But I don't, like when I tell people that I'm from Vietnam, they're always kind of shocked because they're like, you don't have an accent. And so I like, even that sentence alone is, to me, is kind of insulting. But people more judge you on your appearance, right? If you are not pale and blonde hair, then you are, even if you've been here, like been in Canada for like a good chunk of your life, they still figure that you're a foreigner. So it's hard to keep your identity, or I don't know. Yeah. Does that kind of make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. No, that definitely answers the question. And now I'm going to move on to some film-specific questions, starting with the film Mike. I really enjoyed this film just because as a young kid in school, and again, what you were saying about being, one of the few Asian or people of color in your school, I feel like there's always this pressure to assimilate. So when you were creating the story and, in production and post-production throughout that process, how did you find that like peer pressure affected Mike's efforts to try and fit in? Unfortunately, you are muted.
I am unmute myself. As we can see, even in, through the process of making a whole film with a group of collaborator, I'm still very bad at technologies. But to answer your questions, what was so special about making this film was that I get to make it with a lot of collaborators who also, were people who are either immigrants or coming to America to studies. And we found we bond over a lot of, the struggle that we feel as outsiders. And so during the process, with my producer and my co-editor, we sort of found out that like the core of the film was not really the peer pressure, and what was more affecting Mike was again back to that fear of missing out and the need to survive, the need to be not understood, but just to be accepted, and how that plays such a huge role when we're in our adolescence age, where we feel the need to prove ourselves. And so for Mike specifically, as you can see throughout the journey, the fear of missing out only gets grow bigger within him as he go through the day, because there's so many obstacles because of the way white Americans sees him and try to make suggestion to him about how Vietnam Wars, like really like it was something that was not affecting Vietnamese people, when in fact it really created a lot of traumas, and those traumas really play into how he understand his Vietnamese heritage, how he is being perceived in America, and how he can try to find a balance for it. As you can see by the end, he doesn't really find a balance at all, because when we are at that age, we make rash decisions, and these rash decisions cause us to go to one extreme, and his need to be accepted, to not having this FOMO feeling anymore, has caused him an imbalance of that. And whether or not we like it, what I found throughout the making of the film, the ending was found during productions, actually, because of our experience within the team to understand the story, understand these characters, because we understand that sometimes in life you will make some decision that could affect you in a negative way for a long time, and that's what we want to land, because we want the audience to understand that sometimes you don't find a balance. Sometimes you go to one extreme, and you're not prepared for the decisions and the consequences that you made.
No, definitely. I feel like coming of age is all about making decisions and then living with those consequences. That's just also kind of like life. So it's really fun to see that reflected in like a young kid in a new place and I don't know the word for it, but like kind of coming to terms with all of his decisions. And he thinks that they're the biggest problems in the world, but he's just a teenager and he has his whole life ahead of him. I was really curious when you were talking about how like certain decisions were made on production. Is there any like specific moment on set that really like was kind of like a very titular moment, really memorable when you were making this film?
That's a great question, actually. For me, I think there is actually just really quick two things. Actually, number one, there's one thing that happened more during pre-productions, and my producer and I, when we found our lead actor Jackie Tran, who's based here in Orange County, California, he was the one who suggested to me the idea that when you go to America for the first time ever, you should be very excited. You should be, very all in on it. You should feel that vibe of like, I'm getting to be Troy Bolton. I'm getting to be in High School Musical, in Camp Rock. I have been waiting for this moment. And for me, as the filmmaker myself, and sort of basing this partly on myself, I completely forgot about that idea, because of years of having been through the experience has been jaded by how my experience has become. I forgot that initial excitement of coming to America for the first time and experience what it's like to be an American. And Jackie was never born and raised in Vietnam. Jackie was born and raised here, but he has that perceptions, and that really does change a whole lot of the film, because then there's a stronger arc to the characters. We find a way to really raise the stake further. And so for me, I think that was like the biggest find of being able to really make Mike truly a comedy dramas that have stake and everything. And it all started out with casting, which a professor for me have once said that 90% of directing is find the right actor, and boy did we hit that off with Jackie.
No, 100%. He was so amazing. He really like you guys really did get lucky. He just blew it out of the like water with his stunning performance. Moving on to the next film I want to talk to, Pho. Something I really noticed was the blocking felt very intentional. So I want to know how the blocking in your film contributed to the film's portrayal of familial connections and kind of that like future, moving on forward kind of situations that we were talking about a little bit ago?
Yeah, so the challenge in this film was to recreate a family lifetime in like 2 minutes. So the first scenes takes place in around 1975, and it's going on to 2020, so around 50 years in 2 minutes. So for that, we wanted it to be visually easy for people to understand the film, and so we mainly used a static shot, as you can see. We used the anamorphic lens, really wide to see everything in the frame. It's like a painting, actually. And we wanted the viewer to have the feelings of being with them in this living room, around the table. So for the set, especially for the set, we did a lot of visual research through family pictures, documentaries, to create a mood board and to be as close as possible to history. And I have to thank the crew for that, because we had such an amazing team, especially for the costumes, the set, the accessories, and of course the actors. Actually, everyone was so involved in the project. We funny things. Klein can talk about it.
Yeah.
We all prayed together just before start filming, even though people were, not in this. All the crew, not only Asian people, just everyone. We all prayed together and to wish good luck.
Yeah,
And so
that was
it was
really interesting. Yeah, because we had a Vietnamese culture counselor on set, and she helped us on everything for making the altar, the set, the traditions, rituals, everything. And she was saying to us that it was a thing to do before a shooting. We all have to pray, so everyone go to the altar and pray, and that was really great because every French people did play the game, and we all prayed, and that was really cool to respect the culture into this limit.
Wow,
And
that's
sorry, I just wanted to add the altar was really important to us in this film. And you can see in the film, he's always in the frame, in the right corner. So he's evolving over the years, and he's the part of the family, actually.
Yeah, that's really fascinating that there was like a religious aspect even within like behind the camera with the, daily praying and then seeing that reflected on screen. I was just like, because you brought that up, could you expand a little bit more about the process of, religious discussions or anything behind the camera, and then how that translated to production?
Yeah, we wanted to be very true to the culture and everything, because in France, all the documentaries, not very documentaries, but the films, the movies about the Vietnamese culture, sometimes not really accurate with the culture. So we wanted to be from A to D to make the entire things to be respectful to the culture and the religion and everything. So that's why we called her to get some help. So I think we can say it's more like a documentary fiction about this movie. And yeah, that was the goal, to be the most accurate possible.
Yep.
And that was for the older people who are in Vietnam, comes from Vietnam and live in France, to show them that is it possible to make something they know, and for the younger generation to see that it is possible to make some films, because in the culture in France, we can be some artist. We have to work a lot to have to get a lot of money, but we can do some cinema, we can do painting, we can do dancing. So that was the goal, to say, hey, everyone, we can all do the things together. If you have some dream, just make some film, for example.
Cool. Dorian, I don't know if you wanted to expand on that, but all good. I have one last question for you. As aside from the beautiful visual language, as we just talked about, the cinematography is just stunning. There was also, of course, like the script and the poetry. And as you both are writers, I wanted to ask about the creative process with it and your creative collaborative process with coming up with telling such a, not a dense story, but such a beautiful story in, of course, like 2 minutes.
Well, the idea comes from Dorian, because he was saying, oh, there is a contest and we have to make a short film in 2 minutes. And Dorian has the envy to make a film about the Vietnamese culture and about the table, the family, and we wanted to see the foods and rituals and everything. So he came to me and he was like, hey, how do you say for that? How do you know this? Can you tell me how we can make the arte or everything? And I was like, okay, maybe we can direct both of us, right? so it started like this. And for my part, it's my first film, and it was really painful to make a first film like this. So, and I didn't do any filmmaking school or acting school, or I was just in the marketing before that. And so we just talk a lot. We talked a lot about what the message we want to talk about, both of us. So it took like maybe 3 months just speaking, but not writing, just speaking. Then when we were agreed on what we want to say, we just started writing, and it was like for 1 month, something like this. I don't remember, Dorian. Maybe tell me.
The funny thing about the process of making this film was, it was that close every time to not making it because of the cast. The cast was
That was
a
so
huge
difficult.
part. Yeah, it was really difficult, and it was important to build the family. And as I said before, it's 2 minutes, so it's really quick. We have to see everything in one frame in 10 seconds. So people
like
have to be perfect
that.
match.
Yeah. Like I said, it's very difficult for Asian people in France to make some art, and it's even worse for the cinema. And going in front of the camera, it's, oh my god, it's hell. So no one would love to go in front of the camera, and we had to looking for 15 actors, and they have to look like with 10 years difference in getting older. So that was so difficult. About the process of creation, so we did everything together. Every step we talked about it. So about the cinematography, every technical details, the costumes, everything. Then even for the poetry in the film, for the voiceover, we wrote it together. So I started to write something, I sent it to Dorian, he corrected it, he sent it back to me, and etc. etc. So that was
we made the
just
perfect couple for this movie.
Yeah, we did.
Kinda.
No, truly, it really does take a village to make a movie, no matter how short or long it is. And I'm so glad, despite all those moments where it didn't happen, like it did, and you're here now, it's done, and it's going to be screened all around the world. So I'm so happy that you persevered. So kind of moving on to boat people. I mean, there's so much in this film for like the ant metaphor, the animation. We'll get to all of it, but of course, like I think the decision of the ant metaphor throughout your film was such a unique choice. And I don't know if you know this, but I read somewhere that like ants can lift up to like 4 times their their own weight, which I think kind of in a way like translates to the emotional strength that like that immigrants have. And I think that was so beautifully portrayed in your film. So can you talk a little bit about how you came across and decided to use the ant metaphor in your film?
So yeah, ants are amazing. When we were putting together the manuscript for this story, one of the things I did for a couple months was to research everything I could on ants. But the story, or deciding to add them into the story, wasn't, it was part of my mom's story. So my mother, when she was little, she used to like scoop these ants out of these bowls of water, sugar water. And she says that when we were escaping Vietnam, we got lost and separated from the group, and she spotted a trail of ants and she decided to follow them. And they led her to where the whole group was waiting. And so that story has always been my understanding of how we escaped Vietnam, right? And when I originally thought of this making it into a film, I wanted that to be part of the story. And originally the film was going to had no narration. So I just wanted to do a silent film because I'm not a writer. I write children's books, but I don't like write film manuscripts. And it was easier for me to pitch it as a silent film than to add narration. But our executive producer at the National Film Board encouraged me to add narration to it because we wanted to expand it so that it is more relatable to a larger audience, right? Because I come from a children's book background, my audience is like 6 to 12. So trying to get 18 to 35, to include that age group, she encouraged us to put narration. And I wrote about like 50 different versions of this manuscript. This 10-minute film took me 4 years to do. So 50 different narrations. And at the beginning, the first manuscript had a lot of my family's emotions and memories and thoughts. And then eventually it like got cut down because for a short film, you have to keep it short. And then eventually I started introducing like facts about ants. As I was researching more about ants, I was like, oh, this is interesting. I can see the connection between ants and refugees. And so therefore, like the more I cut out of my family's narration and added the ant narration in, the more the manuscript came together and kind of made sense. Because what you're seeing on screen is what is my family story, but what you're hearing is all the like facts about ants that coincide with like refugees, like how they like would sacrifice themselves. Like the older ants would stay behind and they would like become guards so that the middle-aged ants, if you can call them that, would like carry the babies to a safer place. So like all that facts came together and it worked out really, really wonderfully.
Yeah, wow. I didn't realize that it came from such like a personal place with the story about your mom having the sugar water and the ants. That's such a beautiful translation into your work. And I didn't realize that it didn't have dialogue before narration. I know like from not personal experience, but secondhand, animating dialogue and lines is very difficult. So I understand that like decision, but I applaud you for including that. I feel like it just built so much of the world. Kind of continuing talking about the process, what were some of the difficult challenges that you had with creating the film? Was it the actual animation? Was it the story? You did kind of touch on that, but please feel free to expand.
Oh, well, so I am not a filmmaker. I have no training as a filmmaker. I come from an illustration background. And then I am a children's book writer and an illustrator. So this is all brand new to me, which is probably why it took 4 years to make the movie, to make the film. But everything was a learning curve from well, I didn't do the animation. I was very lucky that the National Film Board of Canada came on board, and they provided all the resources. So anything I didn't understand, they gave me either advice or they brought somebody on board that can help consult. And then my co-director, Kel Borsman, has a background in animation. So I'm very lucky to partner up with him, and he guide the film through, especially on the animation side. And so it was quite an experience. And so I can totally relate to the folks at FUD who said that, you know, it is difficult to make a film, and it does require a lot of patience, and it does take a team to make a film. And that's something that was the biggest thing I learned from filmmaking, is because I'm a children's book writer, I write by myself. Like I'm at home by myself. It's a very singular job, but on a team, we had a lot of help. And that's the thing. It was a lot of help, a lot of support. And that is the most memorable part for me, is like, I plant this idea. I brought this little seed to like the National Film Board, and they just made it grow and bloom, and it expanded more than I envisioned. It is sometimes, you know, when you see on the news like all these like jaded stories about the film industry, once in a while, like from my experience, I had a wonderful time.
I'm so glad to hear that. And I really like that you kind of expanded your, knowledge of art and being collaborative and kind of branching out from your very solo children's illustrator, career. Is there kind of what I've asked the other films, but is there any like specific moment that was really memorable for you throughout this process that you'd like to share?
No, I feel like every part of it. If you ask my co-director, like I tend to rant when I'm upset, and so I ranted a lot, and and the whole process was very painful. Like I was basically dragged kicking and screaming throughout the whole process, just because it was such a learning curve. And the amount of times I cursed my producer or my coach, I cursed basically everybody on the team at least once. But yeah, no. But at the end of it, seeing it on screen and then seeing it all come together, and that's the problem, was because I couldn't see the bigger picture. Like I was just stuck in the moment of it. But when I saw it on screen and heard it, and I was just like, wow, like we did that as a team. And I remember every moment of it, the journey of it, and just like our journey from Vietnam to Canada, like that I have no memories of, but I do have the memory of this. So this journey from this tiny little idea that basically started from Vietnam and ended up in Canada, I will remember that journey.
Wow, that's really beautiful. And I think all the filmmakers here, y'all were like laughing when she was talking about how frustrating filmmaking is. So I think we can all really resonate with that. Those moments of frustration, but then once you get through it and just, again, seeing that final product, you're like, wow, I made this through all of that chaos. But yeah, so we are kind of running a little bit low on time, so I just wanted to wrap everything up. I wanted to thank all the filmmakers here for taking time to answer the questions and share about the experience of the films that we just watched. And for the viewers at home, you can still watch all the movies and support Viet Film Fest 2024 all the way from now to October 20th. Again, thank you so much for tuning in, and I hope to see you all very soon.